We've paid a lot of attention to the Democratic race for president on this program over the last several months, and we're trying to introduce you to all of the candidates. There are 18 Democrats now. There is a Republican race for the nomination as well. Yes, Donald Trump is almost assured of getting his chance at a second term. Putting it in a term he might use, the Republicans have a foursome. There's President Trump. There's also former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld, and former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford. We focus our time on the latter this morning. Mark Sanford might have the most name recognition among the three Republican challengers. He spent most of his childhood in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Sanford graduated from high school, though, in South Carolina. He has a bachelor's degree in business from Furman University and an MBA from the University of Virginia. Sanford spent his professional career in real estate and founded a leasing and brokerage company. Mark Sanford started his political career in Congress. He served South Carolina in the House of Representatives from 1995 to 2001, then went on to become South Carolina's governor in 2003, a job he held for 8 years and left after being limited to 2 terms. A highly publicized affair, though, tarnished the end of his leadership. Sanford actually disappeared from the state for several days. That's when his affair came out of the shadows. He then went back to his old seat in Congress. Sanford was there for a second stint from 2013 to January of this year. He lost to another Republican in a primary challenge. A Democrat now holds that seat in South Carolina. Mark Sanford has been an outspoken opponent of President Trump, and that likely prompted the primary challenge from a Trump supporter that cost him his most recent job. Now, Sanford doesn't shy away from being a conservative Republican. I had a chance to sit down with him a little more than a week ago when he came through the Quad Cities. You'll see that conversation this morning. We start with his motivation for challenging Donald Trump. Are you running just to try to weaken the president?
No, a lot of people have criticized me on Republican friends have said, well, you know, this could weaken the president. I said, no. There are a bunch of football teams out there across this country training on the weekday, scrimmage and practice and getting ready for that big game on Friday night, and they're made stronger because of that competition. Competition's the American way. And so I think as a Republican Party, we would be that much stronger if we had a robust conversation and debate of ideas that we're not having right now.
If the choice comes down to President Trump and any of the Democrats, would you vote for the Democrat?
What I've said is I'm a conservative Republican. I'm an issue person. And at this point, the bundle of issues on the Republican side is closer to me, particularly on debt, deficit, government spending. When Bernie is coming up with, $30 trillion packages, I'm not going to vote that way. And so, am I a fan of President Trump's? No. Is he a fan of mine? No. But I think I'd probably, at the end of the day, vote that way before I'd vote for something that adds $30 trillion to the budget.
Your biggest hope to gain momentum in the race would be to win the South Carolina primary, but the state Republican Party won't recognize the other candidates and won't hold a primary, giving basically all the state's party delegates to the president. What do you think about that, and how do you overcome it?
It's certainly a setback, but it's telling at 2 different levels. One is it's anti-democratic. I mean, the idea of disenfranchising about 5 million voters in South Carolina and taking them from what they've always had in terms of a disproportionate voice in our political process, just as Iowa has, to me isn't something that makes sense. But more importantly, it's telling that somebody's looking at numbers in the Trump organization that they don't like. Because in the world of politics, if you have the chance to pick up an 80 or a 90% win, which is what they allege their level of support to be, you do it. Particularly you do it if it's the first in the South primary, given its implications in other states to follow. But they're not doing it. They took it off the table, and that's telling. It says something is out there they don't like, and I saw that in the congressional district that I used to represent, wherein it went Democratic for the first time in 50 years, in large measure just based on the president's tone alone. So I'm a 2-term governor of that state. I've built political organizations in that state that have won statewide races. It says to me that they took it off the table for me, that they're worried about something.
What do you think? You touched on it early in the conversation, but overall, what do you think is the identity now of the Republican Party under President Trump, and how do you think it should be different?
It's too much of a cult of personality. If you're a conservative, and I'm a very conservative Republican if you look at my voting record, our founding fathers set up a nation of laws and not men. It's not about any one man or any one woman. It's about the institutions of our government and the systems that are in place. And so I think we're a bit of a cult of personality. I think that it's going to prove to be a big mistake. I think we've lost our moorings on the way in which we're spending. This debt package the president just signed adds $1/3 of $1 trillion in new spending over the next 2 years and an additional $2 trillion over the next 10 years. Spending has exploded under this administration's watch, and I think as conservatives we all ought to watch out on that.
Do you think the president should be impeached and removed from office based on the information that's come to light?
I think it's very troubling. Generally, where there's smoke, there's fire. That's been my experience in life, but I believe in the judicial system of innocence until proven guilty. So I think we need to dig in and look at what's occurred.
But based on what you know, what we've come to light as a society, what information has gone public.
Well, I think ultimately the decisions are decided much better at the voting block. If you look at the last two impeachments, they were in the first term of a possible two-term presidency. This one's different. It's within a matter of months of an election.
The election cycle, yes.
And I think that, again, I think that the people, if they find information troubling, ought to be afforded the luxury of deciding to impeach the president or not, rather than 100 senators.
That's part of my conversation with Mark Sanford. Still ahead, more on spending and health care, how the Republican presidential challenger uses the former to justify his position on the latter. For the record.